Hi, it's the 29th of April, and it is. Come on, Mickey. Mickey,
7:15 in the morning, my
it's.
man.
Mi- Come on, Mickey. Oh, for goodness sake. What's Mickey doing? Oh, it's on silent. Sorry.
It's 3:16.
Yeah,
That's awesome, dude.
sorry. All that faffing for just that one little bit. Hey, welcome, Argenis, to Geeks on Screens with Coffee. Give me a
Mark,
second.
thank you for having me, man.
Hey,
It's been
I haven't had you
a long
yet.
time coming.
You say thank. Right. At the end, you decide whether it was worth coming on, right? Not at the beginning.
I've seen your shows before, so yeah, I appreciate you having me.
All right. Well, you know what you're going to get, and obviously you get your name in.
Nice.
I need to move it down for you, don't I? Oh, which camera? Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
Axe or speak, yeah.
Yeah. At least these letters. So yesterday the letters kept slipping down. The other day they kept falling off the back.
Nice, man.
So, hey, how have you been? And I mean, Geeks on Screens
Uh,
with Coffee. What are you drinking?
Tons of coffee. It's the way to get the day started here.
Are you
Uh,
really coffee fiends? Is that like from a filter machine, or is it from?
yeah, this is so we're Venezuelans, and so we don't do the traditional American drip coffee. We have an espresso maker.
Okay.
It's not a fancy espresso maker, it's just an Italian espresso maker, right? The one that you put on top of the stove, right? The Bialetti one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I had one of
that's what we
those.
do.
It didn't work out very well. I could never get the right grain of coffee to put in it to then get. I kept putting the wrong coffee in it. Wrong. So it was too fine, I think, and it would just.
Oh yeah, that it'll seep up the unfiltered grain. Yeah.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
We have it down to a science by now. We know exactly how many seconds to leave the grinder on, and
Oh, okay. I'm really lazy.
also I might trust me. The that is the way it is.
So I mean, how have you been? I mean, how are you doing? You good at the moment?
I'm pretty happy at the fact that I got my second shot a few weeks ago, and I was already able to travel and go to a friend's wedding this past weekend, and it felt almost normal. Like I know the rest of the rest of the world is slowly getting there, slowly but surely. But here in the U.S., I was sort of expecting things not to move as fast, and they are moving fast. So they're already talking about July 1st going back to normal in certain places, like New York City, completely back to normal, which is amazing. So yeah, I'm excited about that. We're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of thing.
I mean, that's weird. I mean, I've got my first shot booked next week,
Mhm.
and I was talking to another guy in Europe, in Portugal, and he said it'll be several months before he gets his.
There's vaccine inequality going on around
Yeah.
the world, right? And it's a problem in general because we should have been able to distribute vaccine globally much faster than we have thus far. And we have several problems, and from what I've been reading, the main problem is that India produces about 60% of all the vaccine in the world, which I didn't know, and
Really?
and that causes a bit of a single point of failure almost, right? There's all the plants, obviously, but they don't produce vaccine fast enough.
Yeah.
And anyway, we really need to get our shit together. I mean I
Yeah.
mean that in the nicest way possible, right? Like we need to start the planning, and we need to start really putting the resources together to be ready for the next one. Because as our population grows, so does the amount of people that the viruses can thrive on, right? And so this is going to become more and more common. We had 100-year cycle from one. But this is all obviously my opinion. I'm not an epidemiologist or anything like that. I'm a geek. But the way that I look at this is, it only took us 100 years for the next pandemic to hit us. I think it's going to be less than 100 years for the next one.
What?
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the predictions that were coming out of the US during the Obama period were that we were expecting something, and it was going to be much worse. I mean, although we've had millions of people die, this is quite light in comparison.
Yes, the mortality. I agree.
Yeah.
That's because we have done the right things in terms of lockdowns and all that. Well, we mostly have.
Well, the disease could be much worse. That's a yeah.
And it's also true that the disease isn't as bad as it could be. Of course, this is not Ebola. God forbid. Well, it would be bad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're talking 12 Monkeys. You're talking all the apocalyptic films, Contagion. You're talking all
Which
those
I
added.
love, by the way. During the pandemic, I watched every single one of those. I don't know how many times I've rewatched Contagion. Like I've lost count. But every time they open Gwyneth Paltrow's a skull, it's like an amazing moment to me. It's morbid, I know.
You are a sick gentleman. I can only say that.
I am. I'm not gonna deny.
But yes.
Anyway, yeah.
But sorry. The UK government. I mean, the UK government bought loads of vaccines at the very beginning. Effectively, the fact that you could earmark them, and so countries like South Africa, another continent, the African continent, have not been able to do that. But if we don't sort it out worldwide, the longer places have it, the more mutations and the more variants there are going to be, and who knows what can happen. Hey.
The only thing that helps is that typically viruses will mutate, favoring them being more contagious, not being more deadly. So that's generally how viruses evolve, because they don't want to die. If they kill the host, they die. So they don't evolve in that way. They evolve to be become more widespread, more contagious. But I don't know, man. I guess we'll see. But at least we're seeing some semblance of potential normalcy at some point in the near future. Like, it's been months of just dragging, and now we're finally kind of seeing a picture here, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go to a wedding. I mean, that was amazing. I mean,
that felt amazing. I mean, imagine everyone in the wedding party was vaccinated. Every single person who was there was vaccinated. So we didn't wear masks during the wedding service. We didn't wear masks. It felt amazing. So that was.
There was a fair. So the first fair we went to it a week ago, and there were lots of people, because it's outside. Lots of people without masks, and we're going, This feels wrong. I mean, I got so used to just seeing people with masks on that people without masks, it makes you feel a bit but
Yeah.
But right on the geek side, right? What have you been working on?
Oh my God, man! Do you want me to tell you what my week looked like this week?
Go on.
It's only Thursday, so we're not done. This week, I spent a lot of time investigating why Postgres does the things it does with write-ahead logging and why it doesn't handle crashes so well. Me. So now I spent a bunch of time doing that, and it turns out that there's like a million. It's like Hydra, right? You cut one head and two more heads pop up. Then you start digging into one thing, and you start realizing that there's like three more knobs that are involved. I find it's one of the things that I kept, like, one of the main takeaways after working with that was that SQL Server is really darn good at handling crashes. It is so good. It is so good. We take that for granted, though, dude. Because if you think about it, if you didn't recover from a crash, what are you going to do? Restore, right? You're going to restore from a backup, But the thing about Postgres is that it's so finicky. If you don't get the settings right, it's going to bomb on you, and you're going to find yourself restoring again. Which is one of the reasons why people just create replicas. So here, start replicating to another machine. Because if this one crashes and it doesn't come back online, you have that one.
Okay.
So it's not. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a pattern for people, but I'm saying that my experience with it was like that. It's like you needed to tune things in such a way so that the WAL will be flushing I/O consistently every time it needed to, because it was somewhat taking it easy at times, and it was a little bit concerning. But anyway, that was part of my week.
So do you not find that having access to those controls, those fine level controls of how much you can push out how much you can flush at a time, gives you more power or control than you would if you were doing it over SQL, where you don't get that control.
So you have two aspects to that, right? One is performance, and the other one is usability. I think the usability of those controls in Postgres is absolute crap. Zero. Like I would, if I have to grade it, I would give it a nice F. Like, and that F would also stand for something else. My point is, if you're designing, we're in the year 2021. Okay, we're designing technologies now that are supposed to work a certain way. People have expectations on how things should work, and you shouldn't be expecting folks to have a PhD on a given thing just to have that one thing work. And that applies generally to every single piece of tech, right? Whether you're talking about your phone or your computer or your car or things like that. And when it comes to databases, we shouldn't have that. We shouldn't lower the bar and say, "Oh, but it's databases." Like we should have specialized people handle them, because that's like saying that that punch cards are still relevant, and those are very, very, very great ways of safeguarding data. Like bullshit, right? My take on it is, SQL Server is years ahead of what the other RDBMSs do. Oracle is as well in the same realm as SQL Server is, by the way. But the rest of the open source RDBMSs feel a little finicky, and they feel a little not up to par. And that's not just on the usability side of things. It's also very much on the performance side of things. For reliability, stability, and high availability, and consistency, and durability, and crash resiliency, like all these things that are super important for databases, I find that Oracle and SQL Server are just way ahead of the competition there, and they command a price, but it's something that you pay for stability, right?
Yeah, well, I get that, but if a product has been around longer, you're gonna have a lot more time and coding and effort going into that. But also, if you're getting it for free, you've got to go, well, I'm not going to have those guarantees. If you're going for Postgres, MySQL.
Well, I mean, in the case of SQL Server, you have people like Bob Dorr who understand this way better than anyone on earth, and they can, in their heads. I mean, these people are so smart. Then in their heads, they picture absolutely every freaking scenario that could possibly happen from any little change happening, right? Because they're so freaking smart, and they write the code so that it's able to withstand such scenario. So it's a good thing that he's on the SQL Server team, though.
So do you normally fiddle with Postgres, or is it just one particular issue you're looking at this week?
I mean, I've never really fiddled at that level. In this case, it was a big customer of ours asking us, to have an opinion on crash consistency of snapshots for Postgres. We were like, whoa, this should just work, right? I mean, if it's an RDBMS and it follows the write-ahead login protocol, and it flushes the transaction log writes, or the log writes in the case of Postgres, you call it the well. If they flush the writes the right way, all the way through to persistent storage, so there's no volatile area of storage or some cache at the file system level from metadata or the data itself that prevents from that information being persisted, then the snapshot should work, right? And if the engine has a strong recovery mechanism, it should be able to recover from that log and accompanying set of data files. So us on the storage side, what we do up here is ensure that we provide you a great image of all your data files and your transaction log files from your volumes, but the rest of the work is up to the RDBMS. If the RDBMS didn't flush the transaction log writes the right way, or it caused a return right, or any number of things, and then it cannot recover, that's not our fault. We handle the writes the right way. We give you a great snapshot. If the engine did stupid, we can work around stupid, So when we work with SQL Server, we never shy away from telling a customer just use our snapshot on the array side and it will work. But when we work with Postgres customers now, we have to be careful. We have to ask them, what settings are you using? Let me look at your PostgreSQL.conf, and even ask questions like, what distro of Linux are you using? What file systems are you using? So all these things matter.
Yeah.
Right. It's a complicated stack, and to get what I call atomicity of rights actually working, which Windows and SQL Server have down to a science. And I don't know if you remember, but SQL Server actually experienced some issues with running on Linux where they had to implement double flushing mechanisms. Do you remember that?
No.
There is a configuration setting for SQL Server on Linux where you can actually turn off double flushing, because the engine would actually issue the write and then it will issue an F-sync right after.
Oh, okay.
On Linux, it will do that by default.
Because it needs to, you need to absolutely make sure that is written.
Because the operating system cannot guarantee you that any single write will actually be flushed all the way down to persistent storage. And the only way will be by forcing that flush to happen right after. And you can imagine what the tax of that is on performance, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're writing twice for one thing that you issued. You're 50% taking a hit of 50% of performance or more.
I guess.
Anyway, it's not, and that's not 50%, but it's a number. It's a significant impact on performance, right? So to start thinking about that, you're like, okay, well, SQL Server on Linux is, I mean, it's great that it's running there, but you're still dealing with limitations of Linux itself. So it's not like you're getting free operating system and you're getting great performance and all that. You're still dealing with a different animal, and you need to understand that animal in order for you to like have a sense of confidence of running your databases on top of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I quite like SQL on Linux. I mean, I like the portability. I like the.
I was the PM for it. I'm sorry, I was the PM for SQL PAL. To be fair, I wasn't the PM for SQL Server on Linux. I was somebody else, but I was the PM for SQL PAL when I worked at Microsoft. So I know how it works, right? Yeah. But and I have a great degree of confidence on what the engineering team at Microsoft did with SQL PAL specifically. It's a brilliant piece of software. But there's all the issues with Linux, right? It's not as straightforward as one thinks. And it's not like you can just take a container and run your database on top, but restore your database on top of it and live a happy life. You still need to know what you're doing. As things become managed services, like Azure Arc, for example, then you start realizing that, well, maybe somebody else can help you with the actual, minutia of things or the nuisances around things, rather than you having to deal with them. But if you're just running SQL Server on Linux VMs, or you're running your own Kubernetes cluster, you're going to have to understand all of this stuff, all right?
Yeah. I mean, I found it fun to learn all that stuff. Get back into Linux, get back into learning that stuff, and then learning about Kubernetes. And then, the first version of high availability that came out wasn't, wasn't as good as it could be. It didn't integrate into stuff as well as it might have.
Are you talking about the pacemaker stuff?
Yes, yeah. I spent a long time working on that. Many evenings of hours of working. But it did work, and I could make a Kubernetes cluster, and I could do certain things. I found that I gave up after a while on some of them, but I did make SQL Express highly available. And that was my claim to fame. If the pod went down, it just restarted. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to do, right? But it wasn't. Yeah, it was a later version that they had all the integration into kind of the. I think learning all the other stack was then. Oh, right, you got to learn Pacemaker, and then what was the fencing software? You had to learn all this other bits that all sync together. It was like 5 or 6 different things you had to configure and make work. So it was, it's a bit of a challenge.
The fencing software, I forgot the name of it. It started with Corosync?
Yes, Corosync. And then they had some other stuff that was named after farm animals, I think. I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, because that was just like, partly because no one else was interested. So it gave me something that I knew that other people didn't.
But it's also fascinating when you start like translating concepts of things that are super easy to do on Windows, and you start realizing that all this crap is so complicated on Linux. You're like, but why? Why is it so complicated? It doesn't have to be this way. Like who the heck was thinking about this? Where's the PM for this? And then you realize there is no PM.
No. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? If you don't like...
Although to be fair, to be fair, let me revise that statement. My friends on the right hand, if you're watching this, the ones who are going like, "We're PMs, you idiot," yeah, and I get it, but there is this sense that usability overall is low, and things could be so much better. And it's not. It has nothing to do with the fact that things run on GUI and Windows. Right? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with having too many knobs, having to edit too many files, and having to configure too many things just to get a basic system working. That is the gist of it.
Yeah, should we say the barrier? So, in fact, this equates very nicely to SQL Server. If you're on Linux, the barrier to entry is quite high. You've got to learn a lot before you can get it running, and you know, I've spent many hours trying to get the NFS system working, and then throwing it away and reinstalling it, throwing it away, but then when you compare it with SQL Server, and this is what used to happen in the maybe not in the 6.57 2000 days, people install it, they go, yeah, SQL Server, it's great, it's sexy, it's fast, and then about a year later they go, God, this is really slow. Oh, and have you added any indexes, rebuilt any indexes? No. Got any backups? What's a backup? Because nothing is automatic. That they could go on and it's so easy to get running. You don't need to set the backups up. It doesn't shout at you and say you haven't done this right.
Here's a question for you: how many systems do you have in your life that you don't actively monitor or keep an eye on? And I'm not just talking computer systems. I'm talking any kind of system.
It's
hard, isn't it? Isn't it a hard question? Because you really, if you're not doing you may not be doing the monitoring or the care and feeding yourself. Somebody else is doing it for you sometimes, like your water system. You're not really keeping an eye on that, right? Your water company is doing that, and you have some things locally in your house that you can look at, but you don't really pay attention to that all the time, right? You only pay attention to the bill. If it sounds reasonable, you move on. That feels like cloud. But there are some systems that you have to keep an eye on, right? Like, I don't know, like I have a septic system, and I have to keep an eye on it because it's not connected to the internet. No one knows the level of that I have in there. Right? So I have to keep an eye on it. I have to open the lid and look and measure and do the non-pretty part of things. That doesn't feel like cloud. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. There are systems that you really have to keep an eye on, and there are some things that are completely and utterly automated, and you truly just forget and just pay a bill on, and you're happy that you're just paying a bill on rather than having to do the work. So isn't that interesting how that translates into how people make choices today on where to place things compute-wise or database-wise. It's super interesting. I find it fascinating.
I mean, I will go with the easy option. I mean, because I am. Well, the thing is, because I don't want to spend my time. You know, I've got an Apple Watch, Apple phone. They work together with the Apple TV, and you've got that ecosystem. It just works. I don't have to configure it. I don't have to do anything. And the same thing with a blog. I'll put it on WordPress. It'll be really simple, he said. Oh no. No. I could have paid WordPress to host it, like a friend of mine did. No, I'll do it on Azure. And now the thing's gone down and I can't access it.
Yeah, we should do another episode and Geeks on Screen with whiskey and talk about the perils of running your own blog on WordPress.
The amount of times I set it up, deleted it. I added loads of stuff into it, and then I've lost. It's somewhere in my SQL database. Somewhere.
I'm pretty sure this is all intentional, by the way. So you do end up paying for it.
How dare you? How dare you suggest? Ironic. I created 2 WordPresses at the same time. One with some themes on it and some extra stuff. The other with nothing on it, very little. The one with very little on it is still running.
Yeah, I migrated my blog from one machine to another. That was, oh my God. I lost all my images on my blog during the process. I'm still recovering from that. So I'm literally every once in a while when I get time, I go to the Wayback Machine and I go fetch images for every blog post and try to stitch them together back again as they were once, because I did suffer a data loss event from that. stupid idea of me moving machines. That was so bad. That was so
Right.
bad.
I'm going to ask you.
I'll never again. By the way, never again. I am this blog. I am moving to some managed service, and I'm going to start paying for it because I'm done. I really don't have time for it.
I'm going to ask you about. You're doing a presentation at Group Buy, but before we get to that,
Yeah.
It's a serious question. Everyone gets asked this. What's your favorite cheese?
My favorite cheese. Oh my gosh, I'm Venezuelan, dude, and you may not know this cheese. We have a lot of different cheeses down in Venezuela, and the one that I like the most is called telita.
Delisa.
Telita, yeah, it's a soft cheese, white soft cheese. It's not as salty, and it's very malleable. It's not chewy though, right? It's not you don't pull it and it doesn't create strings
Like
like that.
mozzarella. It's
It a little bit like mozzarella, but I would say with a little more consistency than mozzarella. It's pretty interesting, and the flavor profile is just fantastic. And we have arepas in Venezuela. I don't know if you've seen what an arepa is. It's basically a cornmeal cake, toasted, and we fill the arepas with telita cheese, and we also do something called cachapas, which is it's a concoction made out of corn, cream, milk, and other things, and sugar, and etc. And then you essentially get a batter, and that batter you basically build pancakes with. Those pancakes we call cachapas, and then the cachapas we stuff with that telita cheese, and it's glorious. It's just absolutely glorious. But those are the things that I miss from my home country, and not much else, to be honest with you. Like the food and some of the beaches. That's about it.
Can you not get good? Are you based up in Seattle?
I am in Seattle, yeah.
Can you
I'm
not
in the
get?
Redmond area.
Can you not get good? Is there not any Venezuelan restaurants up there? Or
So we have a couple of Venezuelan restaurants. They're not close, so it's not easy to get to them.
right.
And we do have, the Mexican stores, the Mexican Quincay or whatever they call them. They sell some Venezuelan products, so we get some of them sometimes.
Actually, do you find? Do you get?
When I living in Miami was different though. When I lived in Miami, that is so close to Venezuela, it's only a 3-hour flight away.
Okay.
That you would get a ton of products, and on top of that, you have the huge Venezuelan community and the exile that moved to Miami. After all the stuff started coming down in Venezuela.
Okay.
So yeah.
See,
That's my favorite kind of cheese, man. Isn't that? I knew you wouldn't know about it because it's rare, right? It's a Venezuelan thing. But if you ever find a Venezuelan restaurant and they have telita cheese, just try whatever it comes with it.
I mean, I might have tried it. I mean, we had our honeymoon in Venezuela.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
We flew into Caracas, very quickly then flew out somewhere else because
I'm glad you did.
I had some horror stories.
The horror stories are true.
I never really believed the horror story. So we had no problem whatsoever and at all. I think we flew a bit further south into the mountains in like some small little plane, like propeller plane, to some, I think it was Merida, somewhere like that. It was many years ago. I'm sure it'd be very different now, but it was kind of.
Merida is just it's both a city and a state, and that is in the mountains. So that is in the Andes range, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the you see the snow in Venezuela. Like most people think that in Venezuela it's just beaches and stuff. There's tons of mountains, all right?
Oh yeah,
it's a beautiful area of the country.
We were the place where we stayed was on the side of the mountain, and we were walking, not trekking, and my wife fell over and broke her wrist.
But it sounds so much cooler, dude. You are trekking.
Trekking. Or walking. Yeah, she fell over and fell down, and then broke her wrist, and then we had to go to hospital.
Oh my God!
It's an adventure. So tell me about you're presenting at Group Buy, aren't you?
Yep, I am. So,
when's
Group Buy
that?
Europe. I don't remember I think it's on the 28th of May or the 29th of May. I can't remember exactly. I'm sorry. I mean,
that's all right.
Maybe forgetting the actual date.
People can Google it.
I have a very short. Yeah. They can Google it with Bing or Bing it with Google.
That's the one.
Excuse me. So I am speaking about snapshots and the SQL Server and snapshots, right? Because we were just chatting about this because I do this so much. I talk about people about data services offered by storage devices in general, right? That's what I do, and people have this aversion to snapshots taken on the storage side because they don't understand how they work, and rightfully so, right? Depending on the storage subsystem that you may use, you may not get any guarantees that that stuff is going to work. And if you use VSS snapshots and you go through the whole quiescing of file systems and all of that, that is also somewhat PTSD inducing. So I'm going to talk about all that. It should be a fun conversation. It should be a fun conversation.
Catherine just put a question in the chat. Can you tell us about your patents?
Oh, my what? Sorry?
Your patents. So
the patents. Yes.
Ooh, it's a secret.
So I have a few. Which one would you like to talk about?
I don't know.
So I have some. Let's see. I have my patents. My patents are diverse. The very first one that I got had to do with monitoring performance on a storage subsystem, right? So monitoring at the different layers of a stack, right? Not just and make decisions on how to improve performance based on those. So, how you have your storage, you have your hypervisor, you have your guest OS, and there's a system of queues and all that. That pattern has to do with improving performance on a system based on what you see, on the variability that you see on the system, on the different queues. That's one of them. The other one, that's the first one appear. There were a couple of ones that followed from that one they expand, how they patent stuff that was based on your original patent. Sometimes they don't even tell you. So that happened with that. And then the other patent that I had was from Microsoft. This one was about conversion of containers. So imagine you have a container that runs on Windows. There's some application that runs on a Windows container. You run it through this black box, and out comes a Linux container. That is the gist of it. So there's SQL PAL, right? So you can imagine how that could actually work, and you can read the patent for more. There are some things that I can talk about, but because I'm still under NDA for those. But yeah, that's actually the idea. And there are a few more on Pure that are ongoing, and I really can't tell you about them. But you can imagine that they're related to file systems, containers, databases, storage, because that's what I do. That's so. I guess I have reached a time of my life where I became like really creative on what we should, and I actually expect things to work a certain way, and I go like, why don't we have something that does this? And then I run it by the patent team, and they go like, dude, that's a great idea. We should patent it. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the things that really amazed me is that a Windows binary, a PE binary, and a Linux binary, an ELF binary, are effectively the same thing, but the header is different.
But CPU instructions are CPU instructions.
Yeah,
right?
and that way, and when I read that, it's just like, you go, of course they are. Well, of course. CPU
there's more to that story though, because you also have different instruction sets when you're talking about ARM or you're talking about like if you think about how SQL Server, not SQL Server, Azure SQL Edge works, that's SQL Server on Windows that is compiled for Windows on a PE executable, translated into ARM, and then packaged into an ELF binary with SQL PAL. It's complicated. It's complicated.
I see. So, yeah,
it has to do that, right? Because SQL Server doesn't get compiled for ARM.
No,
it gets compiled for x86 or x64, however you want to see it, and then it's translated into ARM, and then it gets packaged into ELF with SQL PAL.
Is that done at runtime, or is that done as a one-off translation process where it's
done at packaging time? So it's done. It's done on the Microsoft side of things. So your container already does everything. Microsoft doesn't ship a translation by layer with Edge because that will be too slow.
Yes, I guess it's got to be optimized because the Edge could be tiny. you
But
want
the technology behind that is incredible, I tell you. Like, imagine binary translation stuff. It's completely and utterly insane. I mean, the layer, the kind of abstraction that you have to manage in your head to picture how to optimize something at the CPU level is, I think, it's just the people who work on that stuff are just absolutely nuts. I'll put it to you that way.
Well, if you write
Some of the brightest people I've ever met.
I mean, the AMD processors, I mean, I know they used to have a whole different extra instruction set, and so did Intel. I mean, I think they're probably merged together now. I know that there was some bringing together.
No, there's always differences.
But there's
always differences.
There's always
it's not. There's the standardized ISA
Yeah.
instruction set, right? That exists, and then there's all the extensions that each CPU manufacturer has. Like, that some may not work all together, right? Like XGX, for example, it's an Intel only thing. SGX doesn't work on AMD. Doesn't even exist on AMD.
Yeah.
And then AMD has its own way of doing, secure enclaves. It's called something different. I don't remember what it is called. And then on top of that, you have the instructions that they don't tell anyone about, that you end up finding about from people who started hacking things. There are hidden instructions. Like, people think this is not a thing. It is a thing. You have hidden instructions that people can start digging into, and you actually have to start like really playing with them to understand what they do, because they're not documented anywhere. It's just like a DBCC command.
Yeah.
Or it's more like a trace flag, actually.
Yeah, I mean, they always have those. I mean, they only document a certain amount, and some either fall through or some are done on purpose. It depends on the reason.
And then on top of that, there's the microcode, which people don't really understand. Like, your CPU actually runs on a CPU. The microcode is the very basis of your CPU and what it does and how it behaves. And the microcode it's upgradable sometimes. It can be updated. It's crazy stuff. You should. Really? If you haven't read about microcode, you should read about microcode.
Oh, okay. No, I certainly will. All right.
It's the lowest level of runtime of what happens on your computer, the microcode.
I mean, I started writing in what was it called? Not compiler. In ASCII codes. No, in
assembly.
Yes. And that was bad enough. Just trying to pop stuff off stacks.
It's bad.
Being young and stupid.
I remember that in my computer organization class in college. I was like, I'm never going to use this. And then I ended up being the PM for Psychopath. And I was like, oh, God, here we go again.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I've got one final question. And that is, I should have prepped you for this. I didn't prep you. Sorry. But you would have seen it. You get the Richard Herring emergency question. So pick a number between 1 and 1001, and as long as it's not rude.
How about 837?
Oh, why 837?
I don't know. That's the first number.
Yeah. Some people have particular numbers. Okay. All right. So these are all very, very random, as you know. Have you ever witnessed a Christmas miracle?
I can't say that I have. No. And if I did, I would probably have a nice story around it. But no.
No. Okay.
I'm empty, man. Sorry, got nothing for you.
No. Okay. I mean, there is the previous one, which is what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you involving a bauble, a Christmas bauble on a tree? No. See, we're in the Christmas section. So every question in this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't you take 200 out of the number? So let's go to 637.
All right, 637.
Maybe we'll let somewhere more different than Christmas, because Christmas.
All right, so this is a bit longer, but
you know what? If we ask me questions about Christmas and alcohol, I will have tons of stories and tons of stuff to talk about.
Well, these questions don't work very well when you're completely no. This question is way too long. Right, I'll ask you one of my favorite ones, which is what's the best gift you've had from a conference? So best conference gift.
The best conference gift. And dude, it's gonna sound basic, but it is true. I got a nice pen. I got a nice pen at a conference, like a pen that would actually work and work for a while. And it wasn't a fancy pen either. It was a swag pen, but it would actually write, and it would be nice. It's like you could use it and you feel it. Like it was almost like one of those gel pens,
Yeah.
But it was a swag pen, and it became my favorite pen for the longest time. And then at some point, it ran out of ink. But I love that thing. That was so useful. It was so great.
Cheap swag just gets chucked away. You spend a
But
little bit more.
They actually spend their time digging into the best pen possible, because that was the best pen that I could have ever gotten my hands into from a conference. It was so great. The company's out of business at this point, but
Why, 'cause
I guess they spent all their money on pens.
I don't know. They bought the best swag, but their product wasn't great. Oh, never mind.
I missed them. Anyway,
All right.
yeah,
All right. Well, I know you got to run, so thank you for your time, and we'll say goodbye to the audience. And thank you, and hopefully that answered your question, Catherine. All right, and speak to you later.
Thanks for
Bye,
having me,
everyone,
Mark.
for watching.